Chapter 14. "She's in full rigor," Doug said as he glanced at his wristwatch. He turned to look at us over his shoulder. "I'd say she's been deceased 12 to 15 hours, possibly more." Dan and Kyle searched the scene for telltale signs and trace evidence. The killer seemed to have made sure his victims were left outdoors in remote areas. Animals, the temperature, and weather conditions could affect our scenes and remove any signs that a human had passed by. I was sure he'd counted on that. Elise had no defensive wounds, no trace under her nails, just dirt and weeds covering her body, along with the black ants that had recently gathered. She did have dried blood in her nose, her face was black and blue, and her mouth was jammed full of leaves. "What do you make of her facial injuries, and why would she have leaves in her mouth?" I could barely look at her. Her face was badly bruised, and the sight of her body stiffened in that unnatural, hog-tied position disgusted me. "It looks like she was beaten about the face before she was killed. I'll go out on a limb right now and say her nose was broken. I'll know more once she's on the table, though. The leaves, I'm guessing he wanted to shut her up," Doug said. I stared at Elise again. Just 2 nights ago, she led my yoga class. She was vibrant, happy, and full of life. She was an innocent woman and someone I viewed as more than an acquaintance. She was a friend. Nobody deserved her fate. The very things that made her happy had been used to take her life. I was more than pissed, and the sick killer still roamed free. He'd left no evidence, and just as with Morris, we had nothing to go on. We were left shaking our heads. The only thing certain was that we were dealing with the same killer in both cases, the man that called himself Dime. With the sound of a zipper being fastened, Elise was sealed into the body bag, and the guys loaded her onto a backboard, secured her with straps, and carried her out of the woods. With her body in the van, Doug and Jason left for the medical examiner's office. We'd need her clothing gone over carefully when Kyle and Dan got back to the forensics lab. We had to find some clue to catch this killer. We thanked everyone that had helped us search for Elise and parted ways. Our deputies pulled down the yellow police tape and opened up the driveway that led into the park. The officers from the police station left with the dogs. Jack, Clayton, Lieutenant Clark, and I stood in the parking lot discussing this new turn of events. Kyle and Dan waited until the Malibu was loaded onto the flatbed before leaving. The car would be taken to the evidence garage, where they would go over it more thoroughly. They had to piece the puzzle together and see if there was anything of value we could use. Lieutenant Clark spoke up. "You know we're going to have to search Perry's house. I highly doubt if he's involved in any way, shape, or form, but we'll get our chops busted if we don't do it. I'm calling it in. We should have a warrant within the hour. We're going to have to sit on him until the search is over." Perry had been detained at the station for hours. Billings had kept him calm and well-caffeinated for most of the day. Now came the hard part, telling him that his wife was dead and we had no idea why. "I know one thing for sure," Jack said. I wiped my dirty hands on my pants. "Yeah, what's that?" "We don't know any more now than we did before, and I'm going to need a stiff drink at some point before the day is over." Back at the sheriff's department, I took Perry into one of the interrogation rooms to tell him the devastating news. My least favorite part of the job was informing family members of their loved one's untimely death, and today would be particularly hard. No way on earth would I tell Perry how Elise was found. She was dead, and nothing would bring her back. He didn't need to know the horrific details. I told him we found her in the park, and only an autopsy could definitively tell us how she died. It could take a few days. He sobbed openly as he leaned over the table with his head in his hands. "Was she murdered? Was it the same guy that killed the boy at Cedar Lake? What am I going to tell my kids? Why Elise?" I shook my head and looked at the floor. "Perry, I don't have those answers. I need to tell you, though, that your house is being searched as we speak. That doesn't mean we're pointing fingers at you, but we do need to clear you of this crime so you can take care of your family. Would you mind giving us a DNA sample, too? Everything we're asking is to help eliminate you as a suspect." Sure, go ahead. I have nothing to hide. I motioned for Kyle to come in. He swabbed the inside of Perry's mouth and took the sample downstairs. I'm sorry for your loss, Perry. Elise's car is in our evidence garage. I thought you should know. It may be a while before we can release it to you. What about Elise? Where is she? She's downstairs in the ME's office. I want to see her. Don't I need to identify her? I couldn't let Perry see Elise yet. Rigor had her body stiffened in a horribly contorted position. We'd wait another day or so for the rigor to relax before having him ID her. Yes, you do, but not just yet. I knew Elise, Perry. It's her. We'll call you in a couple of days to come in for an official ID. Right now you need to call your parents and tell them what happened. They have the kids, don't they? We can't let you leave yet, but you should make that call. Sergeant, please find the person that did this to Elise. I don't have a wife anymore, and my kids just lost their mother. I don't know how to go forward from here. I squeezed his hand. You have my word. We'll find this monster and bring him to justice. I watched as Perry was led to a phone. We had to confiscate his cell phone. It was protocol. I said a silent prayer for him and his family. He was a broken man, and my heart ached for his loss, but we had to stay focused on catching this madman. I went back to the bullpen where Jack, Clayton, and Billings sat. The lieutenant came out of his office and joined us at a corner table. How's Perry doing? Lieutenant Clark asked. Not good. How are we going to find this killer, Lieutenant? We don't have a damn shred of evidence. Forensics has pictures, Doug has a body, and us? We have nothing. No leads, no suspect, no motive, no eyewitnesses, and no evidence. Okay, then, what do we have? Jack spoke up. We think the perp is at least my height, and he must be strong and fit. He's likely from around here because he knows the area well. He may be someone that deals and takes drugs, hence his nickname, Dime. There isn't a connection between Morris and Elise as far as we know. Perry didn't seem to recognize Morris's name other than from what he read in the paper. We have to follow up on that anyway to make sure there's no connection whatsoever between the two. Maybe Elise knew someone Morris knew. We're already on that, Lieutenant, I said. Billings told Lieutenant Colgate that they need more names on Morris's end. We can cross-reference the list I intend to get from Perry. We'll see if anything shakes out. I'll ask him to start on it while he's waiting here anyway. Good. Just think of every angle you can. We need Perry to give us a list of his own acquaintances, too. What does he do for a living? Jack checked his notes. He's a CPA. Lieutenant Clark slapped his hand on the table. Okay, follow that, too. Maybe somebody didn't like the way Perry prepared their taxes. I don't care how stupid it sounds. Check everything. Talk to the North Bend PD and see if they want to lend a hand. They can dig in deeper with the business owners from the strip mall. Maybe somebody there had a beef with Elise. I'll have a few deputies pull extra shifts. We need videos from businesses along her route home. Just because nobody followed her out of the strip mall doesn't mean they weren't waiting somewhere else. Get some deputies out there collecting video feed from every business that has surveillance cameras. Get the tech guys on it. I don't care if they have to pull double shifts. Let's move. Got it, boss, Billings said as he scratched his goatee. I'll get more deputies in here. Okay, get a plan underway. We need something solid. We have to apprehend this maniac before he becomes a serial killer. Lieutenant Clark cracked his knuckles. I'll call downtown and see how much the city can pitch in. If this gets worse, we may have to call in help from the State Patrol, too. Chapter 15. Clayton and Billings went through Morris's file again. They searched for hours for any clue that would connect him and Elise. It didn't make sense. We needed to gather names and find a common thread. I looked at the clock. 4:30. What had started out as a half-day of work had turned into another murder with no leads. I'm ordering a couple of pizzas. We can't live on vending machine candy bars forever. I called Dick's Pizzeria and placed the order. They said to expect the pizzas in 30 minutes. Jack and I went downstairs to talk to Kyle and Dan. We entered the forensics lab. I wanted to ask if there was anything new, but their blank looks told me all I needed to know. They didn't have anything to offer. There wasn't any trace evidence on Elise's clothing, the stretch cord, tights, or mat. They hadn't found any fingerprints other than Elise's on the car's door handles or steering wheel. The only evidence on her clothing was from the park: dirt, leaves, and twigs. Jack and I sat at the table with Dan and Kyle and brainstormed. I was sure they needed a break anyway. I'm thinking this guy knows how to play the game. It may be his first rodeo or not, but he knows how to avoid being detected. He doesn't use the same kill method twice, and we have no idea where he's going to pop up next or who his target will be. He leaves nothing behind and no trace of his actions. What are we missing? I asked. I looked from face to face, hoping for an epiphany, an aha moment from anyone, but nobody said a word. You guys didn't find anything at either scene, such as a murder weapon, fingerprints, or tire tracks. Morris had a knife according to his boys, and he was killed with a knife, but none was found. Elise was killed with her own yoga gear. It can't be a coincidence that this killer doesn't have to bring his own weapon to commit the crime. Even though there isn't a connection between the two of them that we know of, the killer has chosen Morris and Elise deliberately. These aren't random murders. He knows who he's going to target and how he's going to kill them. There had to be something that connected Elise to Morris. Or someone, Kyle said. Jack spoke up. Maybe that's it. It's possible that the connection isn't actually between Morris and Elise at all. It could be someone the killer knows that connects them. I squeezed my temples. That's awesome. How in the world are we going to figure that one out? I breathed a deep sigh. Okay, guys, we need a mental break. I took the liberty of ordering a couple of pizzas. I glanced at the clock. They should be here in about 20 minutes. Come on up and join us in the lunchroom. I'll tell Doug and Jason. I entered the autopsy room and found Doug sitting at his computer. He glanced up when I approached him. Sergeant, what can I do for you? We have a few pizzas on the way. They should be here in 15 minutes or so. Come on up and join us. Where's Jason? I noticed Doug had just finished filling out the online paperwork for Morris's transport to Milwaukee. He got up and turned on the printer. I sent him home. There's nothing more to do tonight. We're okay to release Mr. King's body, right? He asked. Yeah, that should be fine. There's no forensic evidence on him. The tox report showed traces of THC, nothing else, right? That's right. Okay then, we have all the photos and documentation we need. Lieutenant Clark said I could sign off on it. Go ahead and shut it down. There's nothing you can do for Elise until the rigor relaxes anyway. Doug muttered something under his breath. Did you say something? Yeah, I said I'll be up in a few minutes. We gathered in the lunchroom, each of us scarfing down slices of pizza like hungry animals. With everything going on today, it was likely that nobody had thought much about eating until now. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I excused myself when I saw the call was from Amber. I stood by the beverage station and answered. Hi, sis. What has you so busy on a Saturday? She asked. Are you still at the station? Yeah, sorry, today has been a total nightmare. Can you talk about it? Nope, not yet. I have a feeling work is going to take center stage for a while. You know, I just thought of something you could do that would help us both out. Really? I'll do whatever I can. How about taking the lead on looking at condos for me? I have an appointment with Melissa Maitely at Realty World tomorrow to look at 4 places. She has a good reputation and is a buyer's agent. She knows what I'm looking for and seems like a perfect fit for us. I was going to compare realtors, but why bother? So are you saying I can move in with you? I heard her excitement through the phone line. I loved my little sister, and just hearing somebody that actually sounded happy warmed my heart. Maybe, but I do have conditions. Anything. I looked back at the table. I wanted to keep my conversation with Amber private, but our lunchroom wasn't that big. I tried to whisper. You can't shrink me, and I mean about anything. No relationship shrinking, no work shrinking. If I feel like sharing, I'll let you know. Done. I promise you won't be my test subject. But we can talk about sisterly things, right? Sure, as long as my private life and work cases don't end up as one of your school essays. Also, you can only move yourself and your clothes for now. Once we actually move into a condo, you can bring the rest of your stuff from Mom's house. We aren't moving it twice, deal? Deal. Okay, then. Can you do me a favor before you head to work? Yep, shoot. Call Melissa and tell her she can expand her search parameters to include 3-bedroom condos. Introduce yourself and tell her you're going out with her tomorrow on my behalf. Got it. Give me your number. I rattled off Melissa's phone number and told Amber that some of us from the department might stop in for a drink later when we left work. I was pretty certain we'd all need one. After the lieutenant called the North Bend PD, they collected videos from a handful of businesses on Washington Street. Between their tech teams and ours, they would start going through the videos later when the evening shift began. We said goodnight to the deputies in the bullpen. We left them with a to-do list and promised to be back first thing in the morning. I told them that a call should be coming in soon from the deputies searching Perry's house. If they got the alls clear on the house, they could release Perry. Make sure he eats something, too, and try to keep him comfortable, I said. Call me if he's let go tonight. Yes, Mom, Mitch Bryant, one of our evening deputies, said. Smartass. Okay, we're out of here. A couple of drinks to wind down and a soft pillow would do it for me. Tomorrow would be another day at the station. I got into my car and led the way. We entered Joey's Sports Bar and Grill at 7 o'clock. Jack, Dan, Kyle, Clayton, and Billings joined me. We needed a mental break from these cases, even if it was just for a few drinks together on a Saturday night. The place was crowded and loud, the perfect distraction. Amber had worked part-time at Joey's since she turned 21. Our family had known Joey Spaulding and his wife Emily for years, and when I was a college kid myself, I used to frequent the place often. Amber was the perfect bartender. As beautiful and outgoing as she was, people flocked to the bar to sit up close and personal with her. She had a magnetic personality and drew people in. Amber was fun-loving and engaging, but also sympathetic, and she listened to the late-night woes of the sad sack whose relationship or dead-end job was taking them nowhere. Her behavioral science classes served her well. Bless her heart, I said as we made our way through the crowd. She saved us a table. Amber grinned and waved from behind the bar and pointed to the table that had a reserved place card sitting on top. Classic rock music blasted from the jukebox to our right, and the long, horseshoe-shaped bar with the deep red vinyl, diamond-tufted front was to our left. A row of matching bar stools held 25 or more people, mostly college kids. 10 bar tables filled with people enjoying the weekend were scattered throughout the large establishment, and TVs were perched on every corner shelf near the ceiling. Pine paneling and old-time beer signs gave the place an up-north vibe, even though it was located on West Lincoln Street and had been there for the past 30 years. Okay, I've got the first round, Jack said. I'll grab a couple of pitchers of beer. I got up and headed to the bar with Jack. I'll go with you. We need a few bowls of pretzels, too. Amber leaned over the bar and gave us each a kiss on the cheek while the pitchers were filling at the tap. We need pretzels, too, sis, I said. Jack teased Amber while we waited for the beer. So I hear a change for the better is coming. Anytime you need me to straighten Bruce out, just say the word. Amber laughed. I can't wait to move in with Jade. That guy is sick, and I don't mean in a good way. She lifted the heavy pitchers and placed them on the bar. Jack handed her a 20 and told her to keep the change. She gave him another kiss on the cheek and filled 2 snack bowls for me. One had pretzels, the other popcorn. But it would take a lot more than pretzels and popcorn to help me forget those images of Elise that were playing in my mind. For now, knocking back a few beers with friends would have to do it. Chapter 16. Dime stood near the entrance. He blended in with everyone else at the crowded establishment. He intended to stay by the door. The view was better from that vantage point anyway, and he could make a quick exit if needed. He pulled his hoodie up and covered his head as he watched Amber from a distance. What a beauty she was. Good family genes. He licked his lips. He'd have to get to know her better on a much more personal level. The voices in his head spoke up. In time. Everything has to be at the right time. He smiled and answered, "Yeah, I know." Dime overheard Amber talking to a customer at the end of the bar. He inched closer so he could hear the conversation. With all the patrons in the bar enjoying their Saturday night, he was invisible to everyone anyway. When he'd heard enough, he slipped out of the door. Dime climbed into his Jeep, checked the time on his watch, and wrote it down. The page contained everything related to Amber Monroe. The name of Joey's sports bar and grill, along with the time and date, were listed under her name. He pulled out of the parking lot and drove the 20 minutes to his house in Jackson City. The basement sanctuary, his place for solitude and clarity, awaited his arrival. Classical music played in the background as he got comfortable on the wooden chair. He pulled the usual Stella Artois out of the refrigerator and placed a cardboard coaster beneath it so a water ring wouldn't form on the side table. His notebook rested on his lap. With his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, he reviewed everything he had written down. He'd overheard Amber telling that customer at the bar how excited she was to be looking at condos with Melissa Maitely tomorrow. According to her sister Jade, Melissa was the best realtor in town. Melissa would list Jade's house for sale and find them a great condo. Dime decided he'd pay Melissa a visit tomorrow before Amber showed up. Realty World might have to hire a new agent soon. "I'll act like I'm new in town and plan to buy a house. She'll happily give me all her contact information, as ambitious as she sounds. Melissa and I are going to have a private showing real soon." Killing Melissa would fit into his plan perfectly. Nobody would expect that. She wasn't on anybody's radar. With her occupation, she could easily meet up with foul play. Being a hot-looking female realtor was stupid on so many levels. Any nutcase could call and lure her away to a remote location and have their way with her. He stared at her picture and profile on the Realty World website. Melissa Maitely was single, 32, and ambitious. She was one of their top earners. He'd have a great time alone with her before she would die. He thought about the best way to kill her. It had to be relevant to her job. That seemed to be his new M.O. I could jam the house listing sheet down her throat and choke her with it. Maybe I could impale her with the stake from the for sale sign. He chuckled at his options. I have to find a very remote home to have her show me, something secluded and very expensive. It has to be a home that isn't shown often because of the high asking price, and preferably with acreage. I don't want nosy neighbors seeing me. He took a sip of his beer as he scanned his tablet for listings with acreage. This one looks interesting. An aerial photo showed this private enclave on Oriole Lane as the ultimate gentleman's farm. A 4,000-square-foot home with a 5-car garage and several outbuildings was their most expensive listing. It was being offered with 17 acres, 10 in open field, perfect for raising horses. The house sat in the middle of 7 beautifully wooded acres located at the end of a meandering paved driveway. This was a prestigious sanctuary for the most discriminating buyer wanting privacy. Yes, this one will definitely do. I'm all about privacy. I'll check out the area tomorrow. Chapter 17. Lieutenant Colgate had several detectives working the Morris King end of the case. They paid Terrence a visit and had him write down every person's name he could think of that Morris had known, no matter how insignificant the relationship might have been. Terrence came up with 14 names. They rounded up Morris's boys, too, at the park. Another 26 names were added to the list. Detective Lindstrom called my desk at noon. "Washburn County Sheriff's Department, Sergeant Monroe speaking. How may I help you?" "Sergeant, Detective Lindstrom here." "Hi, Bill. What have you got?" "Well, first I wanted to extend my sympathy. I heard about the second victim from the lieutenant. I hear you knew the deceased." "Yeah, it's such a shame. She was actually my yoga instructor and a casual friend. We're expecting her husband soon. He said he was getting together every name he could think of for us, including his own acquaintances. How's it going on your end?" Jack held up the coffee pot. I nodded. He poured me a fresh cup. "We have 40 names between his little gang boys and the uncle. I can email or fax you the list." I took a sip and responded. "That would be great. Fax is fine. I'm not optimistic that we'll find a match, but at least we can rule out a connection if none of the names cross-reference. Oh, by the way, we're releasing Morris's body back to his uncle on Monday. A transport will deliver Morris's body to... Hang on. I checked my notes. Shoot, all I have is Cavalry Baptist Church. That isn't going to work. I'll have to call Terrence King and find out what funeral home he plans to use." "Don't worry about it, Sergeant. I'll handle it. You have enough on your plate." "Are you sure?" "No problem." "Okay, you should be getting the fax any minute now. Keep us posted if you get a match. Better yet, keep us posted anyway. Enjoy your Sunday if you can." "Same to you. Goodbye." I hung up the phone and pulled the sheet with the list of names out of the fax machine. Now all I needed was for Perry to finish his list. He was released late last night and apparently spent the night at his folks' house. He called in a half-hour ago and said he needed to stop at home to pick up his own tax client list. "Is Doug here?" Jack asked. "I haven't seen him. Maybe he's taking today off. Elise's autopsy will probably go better tomorrow anyway, but he's going to have to make that decision. Perry will have to come back again for the ID. Maybe a picture of her face is all that's necessary for now. We could probably show Perry that much." The door between the reception counter and the bullpen buzzed open, and Perry was escorted in. He looked a mess. Bags hung under his still red, puffy eyes. His hair looked as though it hadn't been washed or combed. He walked in with a manila folder in his hand. We stood and greeted him, then I offered him something to drink. Jack pointed to the small table near the wall. "Let's sit over here, Perry. Jade, do you have the list from Detective Lindstrom?" "Yep, sure do." I carried 2 cups of coffee and the sheet of paper to the table and took a seat. Jack was on one side of Perry, and I was on the other. "So this list contains your and Elise's friends, family, and casual acquaintances?" "Yes, it's all I could come up with. Here's the list of all my clients' names, too." "Thank you. This shouldn't take long. Would you like something from the vending machine? Chips, cookies, anything?" "No, I'm fine." I knew he wasn't fine, and I'd heard he didn't eat anything last night when the deputies offered him food. "Are the kids at your parents' house?" "Yeah. Can we cut the small talk and just get this done? I'd like to be with my children." I replied, "Sure thing." I made a copy of the list Detective Lindstrom sent so Jack could compare names to Perry's client list, and I could compare the names to Perry's personal list. I ran down both sheets side by side with my index finger, hoping for a match. Nothing. Perry had 90 tax clients, and Jack checked them all. No names matched. Normally, the husband was the primary suspect, at least in the beginning. We checked everything in Perry's house, and it was clean. Todd, Billy, Luke, and Lee went through his phone records, credit card receipts, and bank statements. He hadn't purchased or added to Elise's life insurance policy. We knew Perry wasn't involved. "Okay, that should do it for today." "When do I get to see Elise? What's the holdup with the ID?" "The ME isn't here right now, Perry. It will most likely be tomorrow. I'll call you when the time is right." I thanked him and sent him on his way. Jack sighed and plopped down at his desk. "Looks like we're back to square one." "Do you think we'll solve this case? Some murderers are never caught, you know. Look at Dennis Rader. He probably would never have been caught if he hadn't been sending letters and taunting the cops himself. That was still 15 years after the fact. I know we're good cops." Jack agreed. "Of course we are, but this guy is smart. He knows how to avoid detection, and he's careful. When was the last time you talked to your old man?" "A couple of weeks ago. Do you think I should call him?" "Maybe an opinion from someone that isn't involved could shed some light." "Maybe." I stood just when my cell phone buzzed. Amber was calling. I assumed she was going to tell me all about the condos she'd toured with Melissa. "Hi, sis. Are you guys done?" "Not yet. We have one more place to look at today. This is so much fun. Melissa's a pretty cool lady. I could see you two hitting it off as friends. You have similar personalities." I chuckled and had actually thought the same thing myself when I met Melissa. "Well, do you have any favorite condos yet? You have to let her know your favorites so I can go back and look at them too." "Oh, for sure. I don't think we should even bother her with the 2-bedroom units anymore. Don't forget, I'm going to help with the rent and bills. 3-bedroom units are where it's at." I laughed again. "Okay, just keep the listing sheets of the ones you like. Come over tonight and have dinner with me. We'll catch up and bring the sheets with you. I'm excited to see them." "Will do. I'll be over by 5. "Sounds like you guys are going to be roomies soon," Jack said as I hung up. He leaned back in his heavy leather office chair and entwined his fingers behind his head. "Man, this is a comfortable chair." "It should be. You paid a fortune for it." "I had to. My ass is glued to this thing more hours than I care to admit." I agreed with a nod. Anyway, the house has to be sold first, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. I did tell Amber she could move in for now, but only herself and her clothes. The bedroom's set, and the rest of her junk has to stay at Mom's until I buy a condo. That will give her time to get rid of some of the stuff she doesn't need. I went downstairs to talk to Billy and Todd in the tech department before I headed home. Billy had just hung up from a call with the tech guys at the police station downtown. They were discussing a tape they'd both reviewed, and they'd come to the same conclusion. It led nowhere. Originally, they thought somebody could have been following Elise, but after looking at another tape from farther down the block, they saw the vehicle in question pull into a gas station. So far, according to Todd, nothing looked promising. I stopped at Chin's Chinese restaurant on my way home and picked up dinner. Chin's had the best takeout food in town. I figured I owed Amber some extra FaceTime. We'd have more quality time to discuss the condos and look at the listing sheets if I wasn't slaving over a hot stove. I was never the best cook anyway, and cooking wasn't one of my favorite pastimes, so Chinese would do it for dinner. I knew Amber would talk my head off, describing the condos she'd viewed. She was probably more excited than I was, since she had never lived anywhere other than with Mom. I checked the time as I set the table, 4:45. She should arrive any minute. I set out a small plate and put both fortune cookies on it. She could take her pick of the fun treat after dinner. We'd both read our fortunes out loud. A heads-up knock sounded 10 minutes later, then Amber let herself in. "I'm here, and I'm bearing gifts." I peeked around the corner from the dinette into the foyer where she sat on the bench removing her shoes. It was nice that I didn't have to remind her. I was sure Amber would be a great roommate. She was neat and respectful. "I bought Chinese." "Oh, yum. I hope you got chicken almond ding, pot stickers, and fried rice." "Is there anything else?" I smiled. "Yeah, I brought 2 bottles of wine, one for you and one for me. We can hang out, talk trash, and get tipsy." "Sounds good. Let's eat." By 5:30, the table had been cleared and the dishwasher loaded with the few plates we'd used. We sat on the sofa and got comfortable, each with a glass of wine, as we looked over the condo listings. The plate with the fortune cookies sat on the coffee table in front of us. "Can I pick which fortune cookie I want?" "Sure, go ahead. You have to read it out loud, though." "Okay, here goes." Amber tore the cellophane wrapper open with her teeth and pulled out the cookie. She cracked it in half and slid out the small white strip of paper. She cleared her throat. "Okay, here goes. It says, 'A secret admirer will soon be revealed.'" "Wow, mysterious, huh?" Amber laughed. "There is Sean from school. I think he's had a thing for me for a while. Okay, now it's your turn." I cracked open my cookie and stared at the message. "You have to read it out loud. It's the rules." "It's just a stupid saying." Amber pulled the note from my fingers. "I'll read it. 'A stranger will present you with a gift.' That's a nice fortune. I like yours better." "Well, whatever. You can have my cookie, too. Let's plan next weekend to view a few more 3-bedroom condos, and I want to take a look at the ones you liked already. I have to get Melissa to list the house right away, too." Jade, I'm really excited about moving in with you. I promise you won't regret it. Mom is already talking about making my old bedroom into a craft room. That means there's no turning back. I squeezed her hand. I know, hun, and I won't change my mind. We're in this together, and here's your own set of keys. I laughed. These are Lance's old ones. He definitely has no need for them anymore. Chapter 18. Dime relived the encounter he'd had with Melissa Maitely yesterday. He sat at the table, enjoying his Monday morning breakfast with a sly grin on his face. Suckering the ditzy, bleached blonde into believing anything he said was as easy as taking candy from a baby. He had entered Realty World around 11:45 and saw her sitting at her desk. The bell above the glass door clinked when he passed through. She looked up and smiled. He checked the parking lot before he walked in. Only one car sat outside, and he assumed it belonged to her. "Good morning," she chuckled when she looked at the clock. "Oops, I guess it's almost noon. Hi, I'm Melissa Maitely." She stood to shake his hand. "Hi, I'm David Ingalls. Is that your car outside? I love that model. I was actually looking at the new Infiniti sedan myself." "Yes, I just bought it a few months ago. I'll admit I love that car. And gold, well," she laughed. "It's the color of success." He looked her over slowly. "It sure is." "Well, Mr. Ingalls, is there something I can help you with?" She glanced at the clock again. "Actually, I'm waiting for a client to arrive. I'll be locking up in a few minutes." "No problem. Just checking out the realtors in the area to see who really wants my business. You see, I'm new in town and was hoping to tour some of the more upscale private properties you have listed, like the one on Oriole Lane. But if you're too busy..." She hushed away his comment. "I'd love to work as your realtor, Mr. Ingalls. Oriole Lane is quite the property. I'd be happy to show you that home and any others in that general price range if you like. Maybe later this afternoon?" "How about giving me your card, and I'll think about it. I'm not sure if later would work for me. How does your schedule look during the week?" "Let me take a peek here and see." Dime listened as she mumbled to herself while clicking through her computer's calendar. I guess I didn't realize how busy I was, clear through the weekend. I have an all-day showing for condos on Saturday. I could probably fit you in after my last appointment on Tuesday. That's at 5 o'clock. He deliberately paced as if he were losing interest. "Maybe." "It's no problem, really. I aim to keep my clients happy." She smiled and waited for him to make eye contact with her, but he didn't. He stared at her business card as if he had to think about it. "I'll get back to you if it works for me. Thanks." Dime headed for the door. "Are you sure? I'd love to show you our executive properties at your convenience if Tuesday doesn't work. Please call me if you change your mind." The bell above Realty World's glass door clinked, and he was gone. He laughed at the memory from yesterday and looked at his watch. 8 a.m. Dime wiped his mouth with a paper napkin, balled it up, and tossed it into the stainless steel trash can next to the stove. His plate and cup went into the sink, and he left the house. He thought of the right approach to connect with Melissa tomorrow evening while he drove. He didn't want his fake name or the property she was going to show him to come up on her appointment calendar. He would wait and call her at the last minute, probably around 5:30. He'd make sure to remind her that if she couldn't accommodate his needs, he would work with a different realtor. He knew she didn't get to the position of being a top earner by slacking off. Dime was sure she would agree to show him the property on Oriole Lane. He pulled into the lot and parked his Jeep. As long as she was on his mind, he went ahead and set the alarm on his watch for 5:30 tomorrow afternoon. Melissa Maitely would get a phone call. Her ambition, or lack of it, would determine her fate. The voices came to life and told him to make a quick call to the florist before going inside. He obeyed. Chapter 19. A mixed floral arrangement was delivered to the sheriff's department by a driver from Lily's Garden at 9 o'clock. The delivery man told Jan at the reception counter that the flowers were for Jade Monroe. Jan signed for them. The arrangement was huge, colorful, and filled with purple and yellow lilies, tulips, carnations, baby's breath, and roses. Jan sniffed the flowers before buzzing herself through to the bullpen. "I'm jealous," she said as she entered the room. "Sure wish someone would send me flowers once in a blue moon." "Check that out," Jack said. He whistled as he watched Jan to see where she was taking the vase. I looked up from my computer when Jan zeroed in and locked eyes with me. "These are for you, Jade." "From who?" I cleared a space on my desk for the beautiful, expensive-looking vase of flowers. "No clue, and there wasn't any card. The driver just said they were for you, and here they are. I wish I had a secret admirer that would send me flowers." My mind flashed back for a second to the fortune cookie note. I shook it off. I didn't believe in that nonsense. What florist delivered it? Lily's garden. Anyway, I'm jealous. "Me too," Jack joked. "Knock it off. I'll get to the bottom of this. I'll call the florist and find out who bought them. Somebody had to pay the bill." "Thanks, Jan." "Yep, no problem." Jan exited the bullpen while I stared at the flowers. They were beautiful. "So, what do you think it means? Your birthday isn't for another week. Your house hasn't sold yet. Lance hasn't reconsidered, has he?" "Heck no. I am impressed, though." "Really? About what?" "You. You're a guy. Guys don't remember birthdays." "Ouch. My name isn't Lance." "Thank God." I breathed a sigh of relief. Now I know who they're from. I smiled widely. "Who?" "Amber. Who else would do something so sweet?" I chuckled and remembered that she'd read my fortune cookie, too. "I'm letting her move in, and she looked at condos for me yesterday. We went over the listings last night at my place while we had a Chinese dinner together." "And you didn't think to invite me? Damn it, girl, I sat alone watching a Lifetime movie and with a TV dinner on my lap." I chuckled. "You know, I don't believe a word you said. Anyway, it was our overdue girls' night." I looked at the clock. Amber was in class. I couldn't call right now, so I texted her instead. "Thanks for the flowers, sis. They're beautiful, and you're a sweetheart." My mind drifted back to Elise. The autopsy would be complete soon.
Relax your shoulders, take a deep breath, and enjoy this moment of musical stillness with us. And thank you for watching this audiobook video.
And Perry could finally ID her. I was certain Doug had started it. "Can you do me a favor, partner?" "Sure, name it." "I'll make a fresh pot of coffee if you go downstairs and check on Doug's progress. I'd like to call Perry and tell him when he can come in. Ask Jason if he set up the time for the transport company to pick up Morris's body, too. I want to call Terrence and let him know." "Yep, on it. Get that coffee started." I poured water into the pot and lined the basket with a paper filter. I knew we'd go through an entire pot, so I made 12 cups, scooping 6 heaping tablespoons of Colombian roast into the basket. I hit the start button and knocked on Lieutenant Clark's door. He glanced up through the window and waved me in. "Jade, what can I do for you?" "We're stuck, boss. None of the names from Morris's list of associates cross-referenced with Elise's names. Plus, we know Perry isn't good for this crime." He ran his palms over his eyes and exhaled a groan. "Yeah, I know. I'll admit I haven't slept much this last week." He rubbed the belly that his starched shirt was stretched across and leaned back in his chair. I nodded. I just don't know where to go with this. Even with a profile on this killer, we still have nothing. He's a ghost. The media can't help us. We already know who our victims are. Plastering their photos across the TV screen isn't going to do anything except agonize Perry even more. We can't even put together a composite of the killer for the media. No eyewitnesses. Have all of the people in Elise's yoga class from Friday night been interviewed? Yep, they all left before she did, and she never mentioned plans other than going home after the class. So that's a dead end, too. And her car? Did the guys get anywhere with the seat being pushed back? Any trace? Nothing. The perp must be gloved at all times. We're not doing our victims justice. I smacked the doorframe with my open hand and walked out, irritated. Jack entered the bullpen just as I got back to my desk. Doug has about an hour left with Elise. Jason said the transport company is on their way. Good, I'll call Terrence and give him a heads up. Jack sat down and rapped his knuckles on the desk. I'd tell Perry to come at noon to be on the safe side. Of course, the autopsy is just for protocol, right? Elise was a healthy, fit woman, wasn't she? Yeah. The only thing off might be the toxicology report if she was slipped a drug. Highly unlikely, though. We saw the timestamp on the video of her leaving right after class, and it didn't sound like she intended to stop anywhere. Anyway, the tox report should be back in a few days. I know Doug is busy right now, but Clark wants the rest of us in the lunchroom to touch base on everything we've done so far. I'll call Perry first and tell him to be here at noon. I picked up my desk phone and made 2 calls. The first was to tell Perry to come in at noon for Elise's official ID, and the other call was to Terrence. Morris's body would arrive at Philip's funeral home in a few hours. Terrence said he would let me know what day the funeral would be scheduled for. Jack and I planned to attend. We went through everything again with the lieutenant. This time, our group included Kyle, Dan, Todd, and Bill. We had several officers from North Bend PD, John and Lucas from their tech department, and Detective Miller on speakerphone with us. Over the course of an hour, and with each person sharing their bit of information, we still came up blank. We agreed it would take a miracle and a lot of luck to catch this killer. Perry was a mess, and it was difficult dealing with him when he came into ID Elise, but it had to be done. He was an emotional wreck, and I could feel his pain. He asked if I would accompany him to the viewing window, and I agreed. I didn't think he was strong enough to handle seeing her alone. He seemed as though he was ready to collapse any second. Perry squeezed my hand tightly when Jason opened the blinds and rolled the gurney to the window. He lowered the white sheet covering Elise's face. Perry's entire body shook as he sobbed and nodded. I motioned for Jason to close the blinds. The visitors' lounge was a peaceful shade of biscuit, and peach-colored blinds covered the windows facing south. 2 couches and 2 side chairs lined the walls, and a few magazines and a Bible were spread across the coffee table. Soft music played so quietly it was barely audible. I sat there with Perry, feeling awful for him, and stayed until he was composed enough to drive home. Just watching Perry made me wonder how Terrence was dealing with Morris's death, so I called him back and talked for a bit, just person to person. Even though it didn't seem as though Terrence and Morris were as close as they could have been, I knew the man was grieving nonetheless. I offered my condolences again, and told him Jack and I would be at the funeral on Friday. I busied myself with monotonous paperwork for the rest of the day. I didn't have anything else to work on, and I felt hopeless. Jack, I'm heading out unless you need help with anything. Nah, go ahead. I'm right behind you. Unless new leads come in, we're at a standstill anyway. Let's see what the lieutenant thinks about releasing Elise's body soon. I'm sure Perry wants to give his wife a decent burial. I noticed the flashing light on my phone just as I was ready to drop it into my purse. A text had come in hours earlier from Amber. Don't know what you're talking about, sis. No flowers for me. Sorry I didn't think of it. Remember the fortune cookie? Sounds like you're getting some good karma. I seriously had my doubts. Chapter 20. His load was beginning to lighten. It's time to get this party started again. As usual, I've gone unnoticed. I think it's the perfect day for Melissa and me to get better acquainted." Dime had checked out the weather forecast for the entire week. A slow-moving warm front was coming in from the southwest. It ensured dry weather and plenty of sunshine going into next weekend. No tire tread marks or footprints would be found at the home on Oriole Lane. He headed out in his Jeep and drove east on Decorah Road, a 2-lane state highway that would take him away from North Bend. He could have set up the appointment with Melissa any time during the week, but he knew she had a 5 o'clock appointment, and he wanted to catch her off guard. He headed in the general direction of the home for sale on Oriole Lane and checked the time, even though the alarm was set on his phone. A small bar with a worn-out facade came into view on the south side of the highway. 2 cars sat in the gravel parking lot facing the front door of Eddie's Tap. Dime assumed one of the cars belonged to the bartender. "What's the harm? I still have a half hour before I need to call Melissa." He clicked the right turn blinker and slowed down. The Jeep's oversized tires kicked up gravel from the unpaved parking lot as he pulled in and parked. Dime exited his vehicle and walked the 10 steps to the front door. He reached back and pulled up the hood on his black sweatshirt and put on the dark green aviator glasses he kept in his pocket. The old saloon-style swinging doors squeaked when he pushed through them. The bar had a strange Western and biker bar theme going on. Motorcycle forks and handlebars were bolted to old barn beam support pillars as wall art, and the bar stools were saddles on posts. The bartender wore a black leather vest and a cowboy hat. He waxed the ends of his mustache so the tips curled up and held their twisted, thin shape. The walls were lined with Harley posters of nearly naked women posed provocatively on motorcycles. Dime grumbled as he took a seat, careful to avoid the saddle horn between his legs. He shrugged and cracked his neck from side to side. Having to get the bartender's attention annoyed him since the place was nearly empty. He called out, "I'll have a Stella Artois." Mr. Mustache walked over. "What? Never heard of that before. Is that some kind of fancy-ass beer?" "Fine. How about a Guinness?" The bartender stared at him. "I'll have a Bud Light." "That I can do, pal. Can or bottle?" "Can, and pour it into a glass." Dime sat at the bar, mindlessly watching the evening news on TV. An old-timer sat alone near the door, plugging quarters into a video poker machine. Dime took a gulp of beer and continued staring at the screen. He still had time to kill. He chuckled at the thought, clever man that he was. The world news segment had just ended and the local news had begun. A mention of the 2 recent murders in the North Bend area perked him up. The old-timer stopped playing video poker momentarily and turned to watch the news report. According to the anchorman, there were no suspects in custody and the sheriff's department had no leads. It was a mystery to everyone in this normally safe, family-oriented community, and people were fearful. Parents were advised to watch their children closely and to keep their doors locked even during the day. The anchorman reminded TV viewers that if anyone had information that could help the North Bend Sheriff's Department or local police department apprehend this killer, they could call the number at the bottom of the screen and remain anonymous. Dime laughed, muttered something, and then laughed again. The bartender gave him a scowl. "Man, why is that so funny to you? Some sick SOB is out there killing people." Dime slid off the saddle stool, tossed a 5 on the bar, and walked out. The alarm on his watch sounded just as he climbed into his Jeep. He grinned and pulled out his burner phone to call Melissa. It rang 4 times before she finally answered. "Hello, Realty World, Melissa Matley speaking. One moment, please." Melissa apparently had another caller she found more important, which made Dime mad. He was tired of women like her treating him with no respect. Dime heard the phone click back over to him several minutes later. "I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. This is Melissa again. How may I improve your day?" His anger subsided momentarily. "Hello, Melissa. David Ingalls here. Remember me from Sunday?" Of course I do, and I'm delighted you called. Me too. So have you decided to take a look at Oriole Lane after all? I certainly have. How about right now? Silence filled her end of the phone line. Hello? Sorry, I had to think for a second. I just finished my last showing and was headed back to the office. I have to write up a listing description for a client that wants to sell her home. I hadn't heard from you, so I made other plans. Can we schedule it for tomorrow instead? I'd kind of like to get this listing done tonight. Never mind. I have to go back to Philly tomorrow for a while. Maybe I'll check out some other realtors when I come back to North Bend. Thanks anyway. No, wait. I guess I can turn around. I don't want you to leave town unhappy with my professional services. I aim to please. I'll meet you at the residence if you don't mind doing it that way. How about 6:15? Melissa's voice began to cut in and out. Hello? Mr. Ingalls? My battery is going. Did you hear me? Yes, I said 6:15 is perfect. See you soon. I'm looking forward to it. I can't believe some women are that naive dealing with strangers. First, Elise opens her window on a dark, deserted road, and now Melissa is going to meet me by herself at a remote home for sale. Anyone that stupid deserves to die. And then there was Morris. Dime pulled away from Eddie's tap. Gravel crunched under his tires until he hit the blacktop of the highway and headed east. From the bar, the drive would take 10 more minutes. He had a bit of an advantage being able to arrive before Melissa did. He'd take a few minutes to scope out the surroundings. From the aerial view on the listing, the driveway looked long and private with a heavy pine forest leading in. Nobody would see their vehicles from the road. With the house vacant, he'd have plenty of quality time alone with the foolish realtor. Dime hit his left blinker and turned off the highway onto Oriole Lane. His head swiveled left and right as he drove slowly. The secluded street was perfect for his needs. He passed only one house a half-mile back, and who knew what lay ahead? He didn't see any other homes nearby when he slowed at the driveway with the for sale sign hammered into the ground next to the road. The sign displayed the Realty World logo, her contact info, and Melissa's smiling face. You won't be smiling for long. The voices in Dime's head smirked as they encouraged him to turn in, and he did. The paved driveway made enough of an S-curve to obstruct the view of the house. Beds of multicolored flowers and shrubbery flanked the sides of the driveway, telling Dime that groundskeepers were retained to keep appearances up while the house stood vacant. He parked, got out, took off his sweatshirt, and left it in the Jeep. He looked back toward the driveway to make sure he couldn't see the road. Nice digs, he said as he took in the front of the house. Before him stood an enormous, sprawling arts and crafts-style 2-story home. The covered porch filled the length of the house and was large and inviting. 2 flagstone columns stood on either side of the matching flagstone steps leading up to the porch. Every window on the front of the home was accented with leaded glass, including the arched window over the thick oak double doors. The home's clapboard siding was painted a soft celery green, and the accent trim around the windows was a pale yellow. Each door of the 5-car garage had arched windows on the oak doors, matching the house's front door. More flower beds lined the flagstone walkway that led from the driveway to the porch steps. A smile lit his face, and he whistled at the sight before him, then headed down the path to check the outbuildings. The one to the right could be the perfect place for Melissa to meet her maker. The latex gloves jammed in his pocket were ready when he needed them. He put them on temporarily to push open the double doors of what looked to be a horse barn. 6 gated stalls stood on either side of a wide center walkway. Remnants of scattered straw still covered the floor. When he walked in, he saw harnesses and bridles that had been left behind hanging in the tack room. He reached out and touched the old, worn leather and steel accessories.
These will come in handy.
A noise sounded behind him. He turned and slipped off the gloves when he saw Melissa entering through the creaky barn doors. The evening sun hung lower in the sky and pierced the opening as she walked through. He could only see her as a silhouette walking toward him.
"Hello, David. I see you've begun without me."
He held out his hand and shook hers.
Good to see you, Melissa, and thanks for adjusting your schedule to accommodate my short notice. What a great property. Shall we check out the house first?
Well, as long as we're out here anyway.
Humor me, please. I'd rather end our tour outside. I'm anxious to see the house.
Oh, okay then. Right this way.
Melissa entered the code on the lockbox attached to the heavy wooden front doors. She opened the box and removed the key, then slid the key into the deadbolt and turned it to the right. The lock clicked, and they entered the enormous foyer. Dime had no interest in touring the house, but he didn't want to create suspicion on her end. He'd play the game for a while until the voices gave him the command. A blind side at the end of the tour would be worth waiting for.
"So, Mr. Ingalls, why a house this large? Do you have a family?"
Melissa carried several listing sheets as they walked.
Oh, I guess we didn't discuss much on Sunday, did we? If I remember correctly, you were heading out.
She apologized.
"That's right, but late spring into summer is our busiest season. So, the family?"
Yes, they're in Philly. They'll arrive once I pick out a home. My children are still in school for a few more weeks. They told me they want horses, hence this type of property."
"That's wonderful. How many kids do you have?"
2, a boy and a girl.
"And the missus, does she like to cook? The kitchen is to die for."
Dime chuckled under his breath.
Melissa smiled at him. "Let me show you what I mean. Right this way."
Dime followed her through the large foyer. Saltillo tiles glistened on the floor. Down the oak-paneled hallway, heading toward the back of the house, was the living room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Heavy, rough-hewn beams accented the cathedral ceiling. The living room faced the back pasture where his non-existent horses would graze. The kitchen was to their right, beyond the butler's pantry and dining room. He whistled, playing it up for all it was worth.
Nice kitchen. Anna's going to love it.
"I bet she will. The center island's butcher block top is 3-inch thick oak."
She glanced down at the listing sheet and read off the brand names.
"The stove is Wolf, and the refrigerator is Sub-Zero. I'm sure your wife will appreciate those high-quality appliances. The subway tile backsplash is a recent addition. Everyone seems to love subway tiles these days."
Uh-huh. Let's check out the bedrooms.
"Of course, they're all on the second floor, right this way."
Melissa led Dime through several more tiled hallways before they reached the staircase, which was just off the family room. She stopped for a few seconds to let him appreciate the enormous stacked stone fireplace whose facade reached the ceiling.
"Here's an interesting fact. The listing says that mantel," she pointed to it, "was hewn from an oak tree that grew right on this property."
Dime glanced at the mantel, then followed the stonework to the ceiling with his eyes.
It's amazing.
The house tour took another 30 minutes. 4 large bedrooms were upstairs besides the master suite. Each bedroom had its own private bath with windows facing the front or back of the property.
This home is wonderful. I'm sure my family will be more than happy to live here.
Dime noticed the twinkle in her eye and the grin that spread across her face when he made that comment. All she cares about is making a sale. It's only about the commission. They're all the same. You're nobody to her. Kill the bitch and get it over with. Dime rubbed his temples. The time was near, and the voices were calling the shots.
"Are you okay? You just grimaced like a headache was coming on," Melissa said.
What? Oh, sorry. I'm fine. I get seasonal allergy headaches now and then. "Shall we move on to the garage and the outbuildings?" he asked. He reached into his front pocket and felt for the gloves.
"Sure, right this way."
She led Dime back downstairs and through the mudroom into the 5-car garage.
"This is the ultimate garage. It's perfect for 3 cars, a few toys and bicycles, and it's heated."
"That's a plus. So we have the horse barn and the other building. What was that one used for?"
"I believe it's a tractor shed. There's a 10-acre pasture, you know."
"Of course. Let's spend some time in the horse barn. I had just walked in when you arrived earlier. My kids will be excited to hear more about it."
Melissa read the outbuilding descriptions from the listing sheet.
"Apparently there are 12 stalls in total. Have you ever owned horses?"
As she talked, she entered through the double barn doors for the second time.
"Not yet."
"Well, it's an ambitious enterprise, I'm sure. I hate to say it, but this beautiful residence has been for sale for 8 months, and you're only the second person I've shown it to. I imagine it's out of most people's price range."
Dime smiled as he reached into his pocket and slipped on the gloves while he followed behind her.
"That's what I'm counting on."
Melissa continued walking.
"I guess this is the tack room, whatever that means."
She giggled coquettishly as she entered the area.
"I'll admit, I don't know a thing about horses."
"Or about taking safety measures when you're alone with a stranger."
"I'm sorry, what?"
She turned toward him and stared. Terror spread across her face as she acknowledged the predicament in which she found herself. Her eyes darted left and right for a way to escape. He blocked the only exit from the room with his large body. She didn't have time to duck before he swung a bridle that caught her in the face. She stumbled backward and hit the rough wooden wall. He swung the bridle again and again, connecting with her face each time until she was unconscious. Blood ran down her forehead and dripped off her chin, soaking her white blouse. He smirked and cocked his head while he stared at her.
"You aren't that hot anymore, are you?"
He gathered the gear he needed.
"That was so easy. I love blind sides. If only I had a picture of their faces at the moment of realization."
Dime wadded up the 2 listing sheets and grabbed the bridle and a length of leather strap.
"This should do it. Oh yeah, I can't forget the dime."
He started with the prep work by opening the small bottle of hand sanitizer he kept in his other front pocket. He poured some in her hands and rubbed them together. He'd shaken her hand earlier and didn't want to take any chances. He was careful not to touch anything in the house while his hands were ungloved. Her car keys were in her blazer pocket. He pulled them out. The balled-up listing sheets were jammed deep down her throat. He cleaned the dime with the hand sanitizer and placed it under her tongue while humming a little ditty that was stuck in his head. He closed her mouth and pinched her nose. Her body jerked involuntarily while it was being starved of oxygen. Dime glanced at his watch and held his position another 3 minutes before releasing her and checking for a pulse. There wasn't any. He placed the bridle in her mouth, wrapped the leather strap around her neck, and carried her to a stall. With the strap, he secured her in a sitting position to the stall gate from the inside. It would be more difficult to see her that way. He wanted the cops to earn their living, and he wasn't going to make finding her too easy on them. He walked to the 5th stall on the left and opened the bag he had placed there earlier. A clean change of clothes and another pair of latex gloves were inside. He rolled up the bloody gloves and removed the clothing he had on, then tossed them into the bag. After putting on the clean pair of gloves, he flipped the toggle switch for the barn lights and pulled the doors closed. Back inside the house, he walked through to the garage and hit the button to open one of the overhead doors. He drove her car in, then opened the briefcase that sat on the passenger seat. Inside were her purse, cell phone, and a calendar listing all of her appointments for the month. He pulled the battery out of her phone and threw it back in, then closed the briefcase. He grabbed it by the leather handle. It would go along with him. Dime got out, adjusted the seat back to the position Melissa had had it in, and closed the car door. He wouldn't make that mistake twice. A scan across the garage told him it looked fine. He lowered the overhead door and entered the house. A slow, methodical walk from room to room would guarantee him the house looked the way it did when they entered. He turned off the lights and exited out the front. He put the key back into the lockbox and clicked it closed. Dime checked the time. 7:30. He climbed into his Jeep and drove away. The voices in his head laughed with him as he headed toward home. He wondered how to keep Melissa's co-workers from missing her. He wasn't quite ready for her to be found yet. He'd have to think about that, maybe while lounging in the basement enjoying a beer. A thought popped into his mind as he passed North Bend. He pulled over and turned around. I'll text one of her co-workers from her phone and make something up. I have to do it at Realty World's office, though. Dime headed in that direction. It was nearly 8 o'clock now. He drove by the office slowly, making sure the lights were off and the parking lot was empty. He pulled in behind the building, parked, and retrieved her cell phone and battery from the briefcase. With his own phone, he pulled up Realty World's website and clicked on the list of agents. Each name popped up on the screen. He put the battery back in her phone, turned it on, and noticed it was almost dead. He'd only need a minute. A quick look around confirmed he was still alone. There were no headlights approaching or people walking the area. Dime scrolled through her contact list and found a name that would do just fine. Adriana Cruz. She was another top earner at their agency. He pressed the yellow envelope icon and tapped out a short text. Adriana, I had to leave town abruptly. Family emergency. I may be gone for a few days. I'll be in touch. Thanks. Dime smiled. He knew if it got that far and the cops pinged her phone, the last message would show it came right from Realty World's own parking lot. Sounds legit to me. He removed the battery again and drove home. Chapter 21. I changed the birds' water and filled up the seed bowl as I talked on the phone. Multitasking seemed necessary every time I spoke to my mom. She was the only person I knew that could talk on the phone for 2 hours at a time. My Bluetooth was a godsend. Yes, I'm sure, Mom. Amber isn't going to be an inconvenience. Actually, now that I've given it some thought, I'm looking forward to having her as a roommate. She's a breath of fresh air. You know she's moving because of Bruce, don't you? Maybe you should talk to your husband about keeping his distance until she's out of the house. Bruce is strange and you know it. Jade, please don't start with me. I'm doing my best to keep the peace. I filled my wine glass and set it down, then clicked the remote and turned on the TV. I muted the sound. Whatever. Amber is moving in this weekend, but her junk is staying there until I'm out of the house. She said you wanted to make her bedroom into a craft room? Yes, I've taken up scrapbooking and knitting. Cool. Anyway, we're going to check out a few more condos on Saturday. I'm definitely ready for a mental health break. Maybe looking at a few potential places to live will be a fun distraction. Do you want to talk about it, honey? Sorry, Mom. It's work-related. Read the paper, you'll get some idea of what I've been doing lately. Right now, I just want to veg out and drink my wine. You know, your birthday is Saturday. Let's all go out to dinner after you girls look at the condos and Amber moves her things in. Okay, I can do that as long as no shit hits the fan before Saturday night. You make the plans and Amber and I will meet you wherever you decide. Promise me you'll work on your cursing, honey. Sure thing, Mom. Good night. I looked through my closet for something appropriate to wear to Morris King's funeral. Terrence told me during a phone call earlier that the funeral was scheduled for Friday at 11 a.m. with a luncheon to follow. As far as I knew, Detective Lindstrom and Lieutenant Colgate would be there too. I slid the wooden hangers from right to left along the pole and found a navy blue pantsuit that would work fine. A floral scarf wrapped around the collar of a simple white blouse would accent it nicely. My thoughts returned to what had been on my mind before the phone call from my mom.
I knew the flowers I received yesterday hadn't come from Amber. The florist said she couldn't remember what the person looked like that bought them, but they paid in cash. According to her, it had been a hectic day with a huge wedding flower order. I didn't pursue it. Lance always told me I was good at that, avoidance. I was a great cop, according to him, but even better at avoiding life issues, like the lack of communication between us. The only issue I was aware of was that my husband was having an affair with another salesperson at the Toyota dealership where he worked. I was pretty sure he didn't want to communicate with me about that. Fast forward 10 months, she was in and I was out. I'd been replaced, and life went on. After the 10 o'clock news, I went to bed, hoping for a decent night's sleep, but not expecting it. The alarm sounded at 6 a.m. I was awake anyway and waiting for its loud beep to go off. I got up, stumbled to the window, and turned the wand on the blinds. The sun poured in. It felt good. I started the coffee pot, said good morning to Polly and Porky, fed them, and hit the shower. I appreciated the fact that my hair was normally my friend. If the weather was dry and the humidity was low, my thick, straight hair behaved with very little effort on my part. A quick comb-through, a touch of mascara, and a little blush were all I needed to look presentable on most workdays. I ate a piece of toast with raspberry preserves, drank a cup of coffee, filled my travel mug, and headed to the station. Within minutes, I had arrived. "Morning, Jade." I looked up from my desk and nodded. "Billings? You're in early. Need help with anything?" Billings plunked down in one of my guest chairs and set his cup on a sheet of paper. He looked at his watch. "It's 7 o'clock. "Yeah, I know, but I couldn't sleep anymore. Thought I'd clean up my desk and file away some of these closed cases from last month. We also have a few criminals being transferred to Waupun today. I want to talk to them before they leave our jurisdiction. Maybe they'll do a little singing before their lives get a whole lot worse." I took a sip from my travel mug. Once Jack gets in, I want to pay a visit to some of our local informants, too. There has to be word on the street about our murder cases. Somebody has to know something. We've got to get out and pound the pavement. Sitting here doing busy work will drive me nuts. "I hear you, Sergeant. Just say the word. Clayton and I will pitch in wherever you need us. The more sets of eyes, the better. We can go through all of the interview logs again, hit the streets, go back out to the crime scenes, and scour the areas one more time. Whatever you need." "Thanks, Billings. I'll let you know." Jack walked in at 8 o'clock alongside the lieutenant. They parted ways at the bullpen. Jack to his desk, the lieutenant to his office. "Well, partner, what's on the agenda for today?" "We should hit the streets, see if there's any new chatter. The local lowlife should have heard something by now." "You'd think. I'm up for it. Anything else?" Jack filled 2 coffee cups from the fresh pot Billings made when he got there. "Thanks. Yeah, I've got to go upstairs and talk to a few of our guests before they leave our 5-star accommodations." I smiled. Jack laughed. "You mean the local pharmacists?" "The very ones. They're being transferred to Waupun today. Guess their attorneys couldn't get the charges reduced. They're each looking at substantial time for intent to sell, not just possession." "More than 3 grams each?" "That's right. Sia wouldn't want to be ya. I thought they might want to make a final goodwill gesture before they leave town. Maybe I can set them up with nicer roommates or something if they give me a few names." "Okay. Well, whenever you want to hit the streets, let me know. Hand me those folders. I'll file them away." "Thanks. I appreciate it. Billings, call a florist in Milwaukee and order an arrangement to be delivered to Philip's funeral home for Morris King's funeral on Friday." "Got it, boss." I checked the time. 8:30. "Billings, hold down the fort. I'm going upstairs." I signed in at the reception counter and took the stairs to our jail. "Hey, John, I'd like to have a chat with Manny Gomez and Frank Luis before they head out. I'll only need 30 minutes of their time." "You got it, Sergeant Monroe. Would you like them linked up?" "Yeah, if you don't mind." "Give me 10 minutes." "No problem. I see one of my favorite magazines." I took a seat and waited. John returned a few minutes later and told me the inmates were ready for me.
I nodded and walked into the cafeteria. At this time of day, nobody had visitors, and meals weren't being served. The two men sat at the table nearest the door. A deputy watched through the window separating the cafeteria from the guard station. "Gentlemen," I said as I sat down across from them, "I hear you're moving into the big house today. It must be an exciting time for both of you. Something different, right? New faces, new friends, new enemies." I looked at their sheets in front of me. You're both getting 10 years? That sucks. Guess your state-appointed attorney doesn't care much for meth pushers." "What do you want, lady? We got packing to do," Manny said, spewing the words at me. I laughed. "Cute. Everything you need for the next 10 years will be provided for you by us, the taxpayers. As far as I know, a couple of orange jumpsuits and a pair of rubber sandals should do it." I gave them both the once-over. "Pink looks more like your color, though. Anyway, I might be able to help you out with your accommodations. You know, maybe a down feather pillow, something of that nature." I grinned at both of them and cocked my head to the right. They huffed. "No? Not appealing enough? What would you boys think of bunking together? That in itself is like winning the lottery. You'll sleep better at night not worrying that your roommate has a shiv under his mattress, or worse. You could be bunked with a 300-pound guy named Bubba. All you have to do is give me some names. I want big names, not the punks you run with." I looked at the analog clock above the door. "See the time?" They both turned around and looked at the wall. "Man, I'd hate to be you right now. Your lives are going to change substantially in a few short hours. It's 9 o'clock, and your transport bus leaves at noon. If I don't hear anything from you by 11, the offer is off the table. Have a nice life, boys." I got up and walked out. A thought popped into my head as I took the stairs down to the bullpen. "Jack, Clayton, Billings, come with me." They looked up from their desks, pushed their chairs back, and followed. I rapped on the lieutenant's door. He waved us in. "What's with the expression, Jade? You look like you just had an epiphany." The lieutenant set his paperwork down and gave me the floor. "I might have. What if we're looking at this murderer the wrong way?" Jack spoke up. "Meaning?" "Maybe the name Dime doesn't have anything to do with drugs. What if his nickname means he did a 10-year stint in prison?" "You could be onto something, but even that would be tough to track down. We don't have a real name, age, or description," Clayton said. "True, but it gives us a little more to work with. We could start with state correctional institutions and the inmates that serve 10-year sentences. Maybe even the guards would know if someone had that nickname. We could ask on the street, too. We have to do something, Lieutenant. Wishful thinking isn't going to catch this monster." "You're right, Jade. Okay, divide up the 30 or so facilities in the state and get the list of all inmates that served 10 years and have been released within the last year. We have to start small. This task could eat up all of our time otherwise. Talk to people on the street. Tell the North Bend PD what we're doing. We don't want to step on any toes. I'll give you a few weeks to pursue this avenue and see if it goes anywhere. We'll reconvene before the end of the month and see what we have. If nothing shakes out, we'll try something else. Let's move. Nice work, Jade." "Thanks, boss. Okay, Clayton, print out a list of all the state prisons and meet us in the lunchroom in 10 minutes. Billings, did you take care of the flowers for the funeral?" "Yep, all done." "Jack, could you get Todd and Billy up here?" "Sure thing." Chapter 22. 6 of us sat in the lunchroom going over the list of 35 state correctional facilities in Wisconsin. Billy and Todd brought along their laptops from the tech department and worked their magic. With the software they had access to and the parameters we told them to use, they were able to pull up all the criminals in the state who'd served 10-year sentences and been released in the last year. "Okay, Todd, you take half of them and Billy the other half. Now narrow those names down to people who served their sentences for violent crimes. I'm not interested in white-collar criminals." I looked at their screens. Only 40 names? Maybe we should go back further, see how many names fit that criteria going back 5 years.
Billy hit a few keys and pulled up almost 150 names. That's doable. Is there any way to get their photos and descriptions too? How about by age? I don't think we're looking for anyone over 70, do you, Jack? Doubt it. Let's go by age first, then description. I nodded. Yeah, sure. We waited while Billy punched that information into the search parameters. Okay, that dropped it down to 115 inmates under 70. What's next? Billy asked. Jack spoke up. Let's go with everyone 5'10" and taller. Weight can vary too much. After that, let's see if any of them are from southeast Wisconsin, preferably Washburn County. Maybe even if they have family in the area, too. Sure, hold on. Todd pulled up a list of 62 inmates that had been released in the last 5 years that were 5'10" or taller and less than 70 years old. That's it? 62? That's a good start and not at all overwhelming. Print out all of their names, photos, addresses, and parole officer's contact info. We'll start making calls after lunch. I've got to run upstairs and see if my boys have anything they want to discuss before they leave our fair county in an hour. Everyone be back here at 1 o'clock. I was hopeful and felt as though we were doing something that might give us leads. I took the stairs 2 at a time. I asked John if Manny and Frank had any information they wanted to share with me before they were sent up the river. They only said your name and a few choice curse words in Spanish. They're being processed out of the county right now into the state system. Do you want to give them one more opportunity to talk to you? Nah, they had their chance. They can enjoy the next 10 years in a real prison. Tell them I said to enjoy their new digs. Yes, ma'am, with pleasure. I headed back downstairs. Those 2 punks weren't going to upset me. I was sure we'd find the main players in their meth-making organization soon enough. For now, it felt good to get 2 of them off the street. Want to go out for lunch? Jack asked. My treat. Why are you offering to pay? I gave him a suspicious grin. You deserve it, that's all. I know this case is keeping you awake at night. Hell, it's definitely wearing me down. You need a little break, Jade, plus your birthday is Saturday. I haven't heard mention of a party, so this is the least I can do. Come on, let's go to the Washington house. It will be a nice change from vending machine sandwiches. Okay, you got a deal. It will be nice to relax over lunch for once. No talk of work until we get back to the station, though. Jack pulled the invisible zipper across his lips. No talk of work, I promise. We grabbed an unmarked cruiser from the lot, and within 5 minutes we were parked on Main Street. 7 brick steps led up to the entrance of the Washington House restaurant. The 3-story building stood taller than the rest in the historic center of Main Street. A brass plaque was bolted on the outer wall next to the front door. The limestone building had been erected in 1861 as an upscale hotel in the heart of North Bend. Over the years, it had gone through many changes, but the building currently housed apartments on the upper levels and a nice restaurant and bar on the first floor. Live music played every Wednesday and Saturday night. The hostess stand was just beyond the foyer, and a long, ornate oak bar was beyond that. Our eyes had to adjust from bright sunshine to the dimly lit bar area in front of us. Beautiful stained glass pendant lights hung every 5 feet above the bar. Gabby was written across the hostess's plastic name badge pinned to her burgundy long-sleeved blouse. The name itself made me grin. "A table for lunch or just a drink at the bar?" she asked, wearing a wide smile. Jack spoke up. "A table for 2, please." "Certainly. Right this way." Gabby seated us next to the fireplace. Since it was close to summer, a fire wasn't lit, but it was a pretty place to sit anyway. White linen tablecloths covered the tables, and a rose in a bud vase sat in the center of each one. I had a sudden flashback to the vase of flowers on my desk. I quickly dismissed it as Gabby went over today's lunch specials with us. "May I get you started with something to drink?" "Sure, I'll have a raspberry iced tea," I said. Jack placed the napkin on his lap. "I'll take the same." I looked around the dining room. As many years as I'd lived in North Bend, I had never been in the Washington house. This is kind of fancy for lunch. "Yeah, so what? You're worth it as long as the bill stays under $10. Jack chuckled. I pinched his arm. "You're terrible." He winced and rubbed the red mark harder than necessary. "So, is Amber excited about moving this weekend?" "Absolutely. I'll admit I wasn't too keen on the idea at first, but now I'm kind of looking forward to it too." "That's great for both of you, and I get it. Look how close I am to my brothers, and we're closer in age than you and Amber are. You'll really get to know each other a lot better this way." "Yeah, and getting her away from Bruce the perv isn't such a bad idea either." Jack laughed. "You know, my offer is still on the table. Just say the word." I grinned and opened my menu. "Everything looks good. I think I'll have the caprese sandwich on toasted ciabatta bread. That sounds delicious." "It does, but you're over $10 already with your iced tea." Jerk. The waitress appeared with our beverages. "Have you decided yet?" "Sure have. The lady will have the caprese sandwich, and I'll have the sirloin burger with home fries. Jade, do you want something on the side?" Okay, I'll have a fruit cup with my sandwich." The waitress took our orders and our menus, thanked us, and left. "So what did Amber think of the condo she looked at last weekend?" "There were a few she really liked that I want to take a look at myself. We have an appointment set up for Saturday with Melissa Matley again to look at 3-bedroom units. I hope the house doesn't take too long to sell." "You've got a nice place, Jade. It should go quickly, especially with summer coming. Kids will be out of school in a few weeks, and families will be moving." "Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to living somewhere that doesn't have Lance memories." Jack nodded. "It looks like our lunch is coming." The waitress carried a tray to our table. It held the best-looking lunch I had seen in a long time, and nothing was wrapped in cellophane. Chapter 23. We reconvened in the lunchroom just after 1 o'clock. Billy had placed a pitcher of water and cups on the table. I thanked him for thinking of it. 62 photos and profiles of recently released inmates lay spread out across the long lunch table. "We should divide these up by counties. Some might share the same parole officers. That could speed things up. Let's do that first and see what we have." It only took 15 minutes, and the 62 sheets of paper were stacked into 5 counties. Milwaukee County held 27 names. "Why doesn't that surprise me?" Jack said. "What else do we have?" Billy spoke up. "Washburn County has 6 names, Marinette County has 4 names, Racine County has 14, and Kenosha County has 11. "All right, Billy, you and Todd work on Milwaukee. I'll take Washburn. Jack, you can have Racine. Clayton, you take Kenosha, and Billings, you take Marinette. Let's call the parole officers and get some idea of these guys. It will probably take the rest of the day. Maybe even tomorrow if we don't get through to all of the parole officers this afternoon. Let's get started. Write down everything they tell you, don't leave anything out." At 3 o'clock, Lieutenant Clark came into the bullpen to check our progress. We each sat at our desks. Todd and Billy sat at the empty desks that detectives Jameson and Horbeck used at night. Clark said he was impressed with our determination. "Okay, take 10 and tell me what you have," he said. "In Milwaukee County, we've gone through 8 names with the parole officer so far. Of those 8, 5 of them hold down steady daytime jobs and haven't missed a day of work in 6 months. 1 guy has severe back problems, and 2 live at halfway houses with a 10 o'clock curfew. Nobody goes by the nickname Dime," Todd said. "Jade, what do you have for Washburn County?" "So far, boss, not much. I'm going to dig in with Barry Nicholas a little deeper on the 2 guys he mentioned. I'll pay him a visit tomorrow. He said both of these guys have past issues with domestic violence and animal cruelty." "Anyone else? Anything that stands out yet?" the lieutenant asked. Jack, Clayton, and Billings looked at each other and shrugged. "Okay, keep it up. Good work, everyone. Oh, by the way, Jade, call Perry and tell him Elise's body will be released tomorrow." The lieutenant stepped into his office and closed the door behind him. I sighed. That's good news. Perry can start making funeral arrangements. I hope the craziness is over for a while. I called Perry's house, but nobody answered. I left myself a note to try again in the morning.
By the time we wrapped up our calls to the parole officers, it was after 5 o'clock. We realized these people had regular work hours, and we were beginning to get more voicemails than real people on the phone. Let's call it a day. There's no need to leave messages and then call back tomorrow anyway. We'll start fresh in the morning. Thanks, guys. Jack rubbed his eyes and stood up. I'll walk out with you, Jade. I'm beat. We exited together and walked to our cars parked side by side. See you in the morning, partner. Thanks for lunch, I said. He got in his car, waved, and drove away. I realized now that a few things would have to change with Amber moving in. The shoulder holster with my service weapon couldn't just lie on the breakfast bar as it normally did anymore. I gave it some thought as I drove home. I should keep it in my bedroom from now on. I don't want to freak her out with it just lying around. I thought about my dad, too. I'll call him tonight after he gets home from work. We need to catch up, and I'd like his take on this killer. I arrived home and pressed the garage door remote. I waited as the overhead door opened. The door from the garage led into the laundry room with the kitchen just beyond that. Polly and Porky's cage stood in the dinette and faced the bay window looking out to the side yard. They enjoyed the morning sunshine pouring in from the east. Their birdseed messes were easier to sweep up from the tile floor rather than the carpet. I walked in, removed my shoulder holster, and set it on the breakfast bar. I went to the birdcage and greeted them just as always. Tonight, Porky hopped on my outstretched finger. I petted him and gave him a kiss. With fresh water and more birdseed, they were content for the night. I knew there wouldn't be much of a dinner choice in the refrigerator, but I could get creative if I had to. I pulled open the door and groaned. Other than condiments and half a quart of suspicious-looking milk, the refrigerator stood nearly empty. I ordered Chinese again and told them I'd pass on the fortune cookies. This time I opted for delivery. I didn't have the energy to go out again and pick up dinner. With a glass of wine in my hand, I plopped down on the couch and let out a sigh. I checked the time, another hour before Dad would be home from work. I reached for the remote sitting on the coffee table when a sound startled me. A definite thump sounded from one of the bedrooms down the hall. I didn't really hear anything, did I? My mind tried to rationalize the sound. I could talk myself out of thinking I heard something. I'm a brave and reasonable woman. It had to be a noise coming from the furnace, or the air conditioner, or the refrigerator, didn't it? What the hell was that? I heard my heart pounding in my chest and waited, certain it was my imagination. The horrific images of Morris and Elise popped into my head. I listened again, my ears perked. Another thump sounded. Now I had to do something. I had to act. Luckily, my shoes were off and I could move about without making noise. I crept to my service weapon and pulled it out of the holster. Moments like this made me hate living alone. The hallway light needed to stay off, or whoever was on the other side of the bedroom door would see me when I opened it. They'd have the advantage. My years of police training kicked in within seconds. I racked the slide of my pistol and chambered a live bullet. My back was pressed against the wall as I moved silently down the hall with my weapon drawn, trying to determine which room the sound came from. With each step I took, I stopped and listened, then moved on. The last room was the one Amber would use. I pressed my ear against the door. The sound came from inside. I stood against the wall, knowing I'd have to swing the door open and hit the light all in one movement. I took a deep breath and reached for the knob. Son of a gun! I don't believe this crap! I stopped and listened to the familiar cry of Spaz, pawing and whining on the other side of the door. I lowered my weapon and opened the door. Amber's cat ran down the hall in a flurry of hissing fur. What the heck are you doing here? I grabbed my cell phone and called Amber. Hi, sis, she said. What in the hell is Spaz doing here? I almost shot him. What? Don't you dare shoot my cat. Why didn't you tell me you were bringing him over already? Jade, have you read any of the texts I sent you today? I was busy making calls all day. I didn't look at them.
I texted you that Spaz was in my new room and the door was closed. I wasn't sure how it would work with him and the birds. Better safe than sorry, right? Yeah, smart thinking. I guess I'm just tense lately. I heard a couple of thumps and thought the worst. Spaz must have jumped off the bed or something like that. We'll figure it out, sis. I can always put the birdcage in my bedroom until we move. Do you want me to come over, Jade? It sounds like you need some company. Sure, that sounds good. I'm going to call Dad later, too. We'll talk to him together on speakerphone. Chapter 24. Amber talked on the phone to our dad while I ate dinner. I never grew tired of Chinese food, but like a generous sister, I gave Amber the pot stickers. She explained to Dad that she was moving in with me and that we were going out to look at condos again on Saturday. I added my 2 cents every few minutes and told him about the scare Spaz had given me earlier. Amber, honey, don't forget your big sis is a cop with a big gun. He laughed when I described how I slinked down the hall, ready to shoot whatever was on the other side of that door. All I can say is Amber is lucky I recognized Spaz's voice and put 2 and 2 together. That cat wouldn't have made it to 9 lives with a hole from my gun through him. Dad let out a full belly laugh. We chuckled. On a more serious note, I went on to explain to my dad the situation we were dealing with in North Bend. Amber curled up on the couch and watched TV, leaving the cop talk to us. We don't actually have any leads to go on, Dad. It's really frustrating. We find the bodies after the fact with no idea who he's after. The bodies are found outside, and there's no forensic evidence anywhere. No defensive wounds or DNA? Nope, nothing. Sounds like he may have blindsided them, especially if they didn't put up a fight. I think Elise did initially. Her face was beaten pretty badly, like he punched her. It's likely Morris didn't know anything since his throat was slit. The guy obviously approached him from behind and overpowered him easily. So what do you have, honey? Only our suspicions. The guy must be 6 foot or taller and strong. That's it, Dad. Nothing else. I lowered my voice to continue. He's left a dime at each location, though. He wants us to know it's him. I guess the dime is his calling card since he goes by that name. Dad sighed. Not a lot to work with, honey. He isn't ready to be caught yet, but he likes the game. That's what it sounds like. We don't want to find another dead body, but without more clues, this guy is always 1 step ahead of us. Keep me posted and stay safe. That goes for your sister, too. Watch over her, Jade. Call me anytime you want if you feel like talking about the case. I will, Dad. Love you. Love you too, honey. Tell your sister good night. Will do. I hung up and sat next to Amber on the couch. She paused the TV and turned to me. Jade, I've been doing some serious thinking. Really? About what? I got up and grabbed the wine bottle off the kitchen table. I brought it to the living room and filled both our glasses. I want to change my major to a criminal justice degree. I've given it a lot of thought, and I want to follow in your and Dad's footsteps. Having a minor in behavioral sciences will come in handy, too. I think someday I'd like to be an FBI profiler. Wow, I'm speechless. I had no idea, Amber. I'm so proud of you, honey, and Dad will be, too. Are you sure this is what you want to do? I'm positive. I can start with criminal justice as my major in the fall. I'll figure out what additional courses I'll need to take. To be honest, I was never that keen on being a shrink in the normal sense of the word, but I do like the idea of figuring out how people think. Being a profiler somewhere down the line sounds exactly like what I want to do with my life. I know I have to go through the ranks and proper channels. Once I graduate, I intend to enroll in the police academy. Amber chuckled. I looked at the requirements to be a cop. I have to pass a psychological exam by a licensed psychiatrist. Maybe I can shrink the shrink. Knowing you, you'd probably try. So, would you be willing to tell me about the murder case you're working on? Honey, I can't tell you any more than what we've told the press. Those details are already in the newspaper. You aren't a cop yet, and we can't let certain things get out. I'm sorry. If there was anything I thought was a danger to you, of course I'd let you know. I promised Dad I'd keep you safe. I caught a glimpse of Spaz, crouched low, slinking toward the birdcage and ready to pounce. Yeah, that isn't going to work. Want to help me carry the cage into my bedroom? There's no way in hell Polly and Porky are going to be Spaz's evening meal. Sure, sorry Spaz had to come early. Mom said he was already getting into her yarn. Amber finally left at 10 o'clock. She had early classes, and I was usually up by 6:30 anyway. Sorry about tonight, Jade. Just think how fun it will be to look at condos together on Saturday, though. Cool, right? Very cool. Oh, I don't know if Mom mentioned it, but we're all going out for dinner together Saturday night for my birthday. Don't know where yet. She's picking the place. Anyway, bring over your clothes and a few things you can't live without Saturday morning. Melissa said she'd check in with us before we meet up. Amber grabbed her purse and keys. Thanks for the pot stickers and not shooting Spaz. She grinned. Night, Jade. I hugged her. Thanks for stopping over, sis. I don't seem to sleep well lately, so I'm hitting the sack now. Good night. Chapter 25. I was thankful for the 6 hours of sleep I got. Most nights, 4 seemed to be my best, if I was lucky. Every night I'd toss, turn, and punch my pillow until I was exhausted enough to fall asleep. Ideas bounced back and forth like ping-pong balls in my brain until I started writing them down so I could dismiss them. A full day lay ahead of us once we all got to the office. We would finish up our phone calls and hit the streets, hoping to talk to anyone that knew of someone named Dime or had heard of anything suspicious related to the killings. A stop at the gas station for a jumbo coffee encouraged me to indulge in a box of 24 donuts to share throughout the bullpen and with the tech boys. They were more than helpful, and I truly appreciated everything they had done for me. I never pictured myself drinking a jumbo gas station coffee, but my life was changing, and I'd get by just fine. I placed the large box of donuts on the table at the back of the bullpen. Hopefully they'd last longer if they weren't on Jack's desk. I chuckled at the thought. I'd never known anyone who was as unhealthy an eater as Jack, yet he was muscular and never got sick. He was strong, had endurance, and could outrun most 18-year-olds. I looked at the clock above the door. Todd and Billy should be downstairs by now. It was after 8. I'd invite them upstairs for donuts since they were so helpful yesterday. My heart told me to invite everyone. We were all involved in this case, like it or not. I stopped by Doug's office. He wasn't there, but Jason was. Kyle and Dan were just getting in. I told all of them that plenty of donuts were upstairs, and if they wanted any, they'd better go now. Jack, Clayton, and Billings should be arriving any minute, and Lieutenant Clark had already grabbed his pick of the bunch. Back upstairs, the guys were gathered in the bullpen around the table. Somebody had brought napkins in from the lunchroom. A great idea, since some of these were sticky, filled donuts. By the time Kyle, Dan, and Jason made it upstairs, the first dozen were gone. Okay, guys, as soon as we finish our breakfast treat and wash our grubby little fingers, I grinned, we can get back to where we left off on the phones yesterday. After that, we'll hit Settler Square and a few of the parks. Sounds good, Clayton said. Billings and I will walk through Regency and Riverside parks. Yep, those are the parks I would have suggested anyway. Jack and I will take Settler Square and all of downtown. Let's make calls until 11, then hit the streets. We picked up where we'd left off yesterday. Talking to parole officers seemed to be the most logical and reliable way to get information. They would have an extensive file on each person we asked about, plus they could tell us anything that seemed off about them. They'd have had FaceTime, one-on-one experience with each person they were assigned to. That in itself would be valuable information for us. I checked the notes I had left on my desk. One was to follow up on 2 guys with the Washburn County parole officer I spoke to yesterday. Both could be persons of interest. I also had written myself a note to call Perry. We would release Elise's body today to any funeral home he chose. I'd contact him first before I got too involved with the other calls. My mind drifted back to last Thursday night and how I'd enjoyed the yoga class with Elise. That was the last time I saw her alive. I remembered her larger-than-life personality and the happy smile she wore when she conducted those classes. I shook my head. Jade, is everything okay? I hadn't noticed Jack staring at me.
We'll get this, sicko. I promise you and the residents of North Bend. They need to feel safe in their own community," Jack said. "Sorry, I was just thinking back to last Thursday. I teased you about joining me at my yoga class. That was the last night I saw Elise alive. Do you need a minute? We can get started on our own. I know you need to call Perry." "Yeah, sure. I'll be right back." I found a quiet interrogation room and closed the door behind me. I sat down, took a deep breath, and dialed Perry's number. "Hello, Perry Adams, CPA." "Perry, it's Jade Monroe." "Hello, Sergeant. I just got the kids off to school." "How are you holding up?" I regretted asking the question once the words left my mouth. I knew he wasn't doing well, but I didn't know what else to say. "Well, you know, the kids are having a tough time." He began to cry. I rubbed my forehead and dug my fingertips into my temples. "Perry, have you decided on a funeral home yet? Elise's body can be released today if you've picked one." I heard Perry clear his throat. "I've already talked to the funeral director at Myram and Frank Funeral Home on Forest Street. They just need you to contact them. They said any time is fine. Then I'll go in after that and make arrangements with them." "Okay, not a problem. I'll call them as soon as we hang up." "Have you made any progress, Sergeant Monroe?" "Not yet, but we're working hard on it. We'll catch him. I just can't say when." He paused, and silence filled the phone line. "Okay, Sergeant. I guess that's it then. I'll call the funeral home in about an hour and set up a time to go in." "Thanks, Perry. I'm going to call them right now. Goodbye." I headed back to the bullpen with even more determination, sat down at my desk, and called the funeral home. After that, I called Barry Nicholas, the parole officer I spoke with yesterday, to make an appointment to see him. He told me I could come in immediately if I had time. "Guys, I'll be back in a bit. I'm going over to the courthouse to follow up with Barry about these guys I flagged yesterday." I grabbed the sheets on the two guys and left. With the courthouse right next to the sheriff's department, I took the sidewalk and entered through the east corridor hallway. The parole officer's office was on the second floor. I entered and told the receptionist, Nancy, I had an appointment with Barry. "Sure, Jade, give me a second. Barry, Jade is here." Barry came out of his office and greeted me. He reached out and shook my hand. "Good to see you again. Come on in." Barry Nicholas had been a parole officer in Washburn County for the past 14 years. He and his wife, Lorraine, were casual friends of mine. A few years back, she and I were in the same bowling league. I always teased Barry about his tie selection. I stared at his tie with box turtles on it and grinned. "What?" I laughed. "You never fail to surprise me. That tie is uglier than the one you wore last month when I was here." "I forgot which one that was," he said, chuckling. "I didn't. It had motocross bikes on it." I sat down and opened the 2 folders I'd brought with me. "I need to know more about these guys. You're aware of the murders we've been dealing with, right?" "Who wouldn't be? The news isn't spreading the best light on the sheriff's department. They're making it sound like you guys are incompetent." "Yeah, I really appreciate all their praise, jerks. This guy leaves no evidence, Barry. He's like a ghost." I pushed the folders toward him. "Look at these pictures. I'm thinking these photos are pretty old. I need to know what these two are like now. Our profile is leading us to believe the perp is pretty strong and over 6 feet tall. We can't pinpoint an age range, but do your 2 guys still look like these photos?" He studied the pictures. "Yeah, I see what you mean. These photos are likely from when they were put in the system. Let's see. Adam Ross was released in 2013 after 10 years in Waupun, so that makes him 37 right now. He looked a lot tougher then. Prison can age a guy quickly unless they're always working out and watching their back. Adam has asthma pretty bad, smokes a lot, and probably goes $150 now. That doesn't sound like our guy. How about Chuck Banta?" Barry studied Chuck's picture. "Yeah, he looks about the same. He's a tough one and not to be trusted. He lives at the halfway house on Cedar Street. He does hold down a full-time job at Millsteel, though. The halfway house has a pretty strict curfew. Everyone has to be inside and accounted for by 10 p.m. The first killing happened in the middle of the night, didn't it?
Yeah, and in Milwaukee.
Does Chuck have a vehicle? Nope. The guys that live at the halfway house and have jobs take the shuttle to work every day. They get picked up after work, too.
Crap. It sounds like both of them are dead ends. Can you print out their most current information for me?
Sure can, Jade. He called Nancy into his office. Nancy, pull Chuck Banta and Adam Ross's files and print out everything for Jade, please.
Sure thing. It will take about 10 minutes.
So no leads yet?
Unfortunately not. We're following up with anyone released in the last few years that served 10.
Never heard of anyone nicknamed Dime? Sorry, but no. That's what this guy is going by?
Just a hunch that doesn't seem to be panning out so far. I drummed my fingers while I continued to wait for the files.
I'll ask around. I see quite a few guys every month. I could tell the other parole officers to ask if anyone knows somebody by that nickname. I have no idea if anyone will talk or not, but it doesn't hurt to ask.
Nancy brought in the files and handed them to me. Thanks, Nancy. Appreciate it. I guess I better go and start hitting the streets. So far, we haven't had any luck on the phones. Thanks, Barry.
Chapter 26. Jack and I started at the far south end of Main Street. We knew every little nook and cranny where the loners hung out, some unemployed, some a little sketchy. We planned to talk to everyone that would give us the time of day along the route and end at Settler Square at the north end of Main Street. On Saturdays during the summer, a large farmers' market was held downtown. Main Street was blocked off to vehicles between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m., and only foot traffic was allowed. Bands usually played at Settler Square, and it was a fun, family-oriented environment. During the week, Settler Square was usually inhabited by truant teenagers, people that milled around waiting to meet up with someone, or old people who were just lonely. Usually, the city police tried to keep anyone that looked up to no good moving along, but today we needed to speak to as many of them as possible. North Bend was a decent town for the most part, and not one that saw many serious crimes. Even the petty criminals had seemed to look over their shoulders lately. Our town was growing, though, and more people were moving in from larger cities. Many of those people we hadn't met yet, had no idea where they came from or what they were capable of. The folks that hung out downtown knew Jack and me. Some of them had had an encounter or two with us in the past and scattered when we approached, while others waved hello. Johnny Davis was a regular that hung out at the Triangle, a small park-like green space in front of Cheryl's Bar and Grill. We sat next to him on the bench. Jack always kept 2 packs of cigarettes with him, menthol and non-menthol. They came in handy when we needed to talk to someone, especially a homeless person. They would sit tight and talk, hoping for more cigarettes as we asked our questions.
"Hey, Johnny, what's new?"
Jack asked. Johnny scooted to the side when we sat and tried to hide the brown paper bag that likely contained a pint of cheap whiskey. Jack offered him a smoke. He happily chose a menthol cigarette. Jack lit it for him.
"So, nothing interesting, huh?"
No, not a thing."
He pinched the cigarette between his lips and inhaled deeply.
"Where are you sleeping these days?"
I asked. He pointed.
"Over there, under the bridge. Got myself a nice little camp set up."
"No fires, though, right?"
Jack asked.
"No fires. No, sir."
"So, Johnny, have you ever heard of somebody that goes by the name of Dime? I want you to think hard before you answer." I stared at him and waited.
"Yep, sure have, uh-huh."
I looked at Jack. Doubt was written across his face, and I felt the same way.
"Can I have another cigarette? I want one for later."
"Sure, but first we have to know who Dime is," Jack said.
Johnny pointed at the barber shop in a run-down building on the corner. The small storefront had been a barber shop for as long as I could remember, but these days I thought it sat vacant. An alley was to the left of it, and the right side was attached to a nearly defunct plumbing store,
In all the years I'd lived in North Bend, I'd never seen anyone walk in or out of the place. That entire block of buildings needed updating and new facades. I'd heard the city council's planning committee had that area earmarked for rejuvenation later in the year. The barber that runs the place, his name is Dime. I thought that place was empty. When was the last time you were in there, Johnny? Jack asked. One look at the homeless man told us he hadn't had his hair washed or cut in ages. I can't remember. I just know that's his name. Frankie said so. Your brother told you that? I frowned in disbelief. Uh-huh. He takes out the trash for him and gets a pack of smokes every week for doing it. Can I have another? He stuck out his thin, bony fingers and waited for Jack to hand him a second cigarette. Okay, thanks, Johnny. We'll go check it out. You aren't lying to us, are you? We know where you live. I gave him a smile. Nope, not lying. I thought that building was vacant, I said to Jack as we crossed the street. So did I. Jack pulled the squeaky screen door open and turned the knob on the wooden interior door. We entered the old, tired-looking barber shop and saw a middle-aged man trimming another man's hair. Hello, folks. Be with you in a bit. Just finishing up. We sat and waited. Jack grabbed a fishing magazine. The cover showed people ice fishing. He frowned and looked at the date. The magazine was from January. Help yourself to some coffee if you like, the barber said. We smiled and declined. He brushed off the customer's neck and unfastened the cape. The man paid and walked out. How can I help you folks? Need a trim, sir? We stood and showed him our badges. I asked him to flip the open sign to closed for now. He complied. What's this about? I have all my licenses. May we see them? I asked. Sure thing. He opened the top drawer in the desk at the back of the shop and pulled out his paperwork. He handed the documents to me. Your last name is Sense? Yep, Joseph Sense, but everyone calls me Dime. Why's that? Jack asked. The man laughed. My old man's kind of humor, I guess. I'm Dime, and my kid brother Jimmy is Nickel. I'm the older of the two, and we're 5 years apart in age. Get it? Our last name is Sense, like sense. Funny, right? My pop started calling me Dime when I turned 10. He said I was worth 10 cents now, a dime. He started calling my brother Nickel then, too. I guess the nickname's just stuck. I glanced at Jack. Do you live in town, Mr. Sense? Sure do, across the street from the police station on Walnut Street. Your license shows you just opened 6 months ago. What did you do before that? I was a barber in Atlanta. Why move to Wisconsin? It gets pretty cold here in the winter. Yeah, I'm not too fond of that. My mom and pop are getting pretty old. They have an assisted living apartment on Meadowbrook, and Jimmy watches over them, but he isn't in the best of health. Asthma problems. Okay, thanks for the information, Mr. Sense. I handed back the documents. Welcome to North Bend. We walked out with nothing. That wasn't what I was expecting. I sighed. At least Johnny wasn't lying. I don't think that Dime is our man. He doesn't look like he could lift a bag of water softener salt over his shoulder, let alone a person. Yeah, Jack said. I think we can write him off. Let's grab a burger, then check on Clayton and Billings. Maybe they're having some luck at the parks. We sat on the patio of a hamburger stand, each of us with a cheeseburger and fries, and watched the traffic drive by. So tomorrow is Morris's funeral. Do you think it's inappropriate to question people at the luncheon afterward? I asked as I dipped a fry in the paper cup of ketchup. Let's talk to Lindstrom and Colgate. That might be their intention, or maybe they've cleared most everyone already. Yeah, okay, good idea. Let's hit Settlers Square after we finish eating. I made a quick call to Clayton as we ate. How's it going on your end? No luck, Sergeant. We're striking out with everyone, or they're just not in the mood to talk to us. All right, we're going to spend an hour or so at Settlers Square, then go back to the station after that. We'll regroup later and see what we do or don't have. We drove the 5 blocks back to the downtown area and parked in a public lot.
From there, it was only 2 blocks across a footbridge over the Milwaukee River that meandered through town and back to Main Street. It was already after 2 o'clock. Only 4 people sat in the square, each looking off in different directions, watching people go by. Old Man Lewis sat on a bench across from 3 young men with skateboards. I approached him and sat down. The others left. "Hi, Bob. How are you?" "Okay." "Getting enough to eat?" "Yep, the Lutheran Church on 6th Street offers lunch 3 times a week for us." "That's nice. Anything new on the streets? Are you staying safe?" "Got to with that killer out there. That's what I heard, anyway." "Been watching TV, have you?" Jack asked. "Nope, don't have a TV. That guy told me." "What guy is that?" I looked around. "Him." Bob pointed to a man walking down the street a few blocks to our north. "He was sitting here earlier talking to all of us. He said to be careful because there's a killer on the loose." "He was warning you?" I asked. "Yep, nice guy." "Thanks, Bob. Take care." I motioned to Jack with a nod. "Let's catch up with that guy and see what he has to say." It didn't take a lot to catch up with the man ahead of us. He looked to be close to 70. "Excuse me, sir." The man turned around. "Are you talking to me?" "Yes." We showed him our badges. "Do you have a minute? We have a few questions for you." "Me? What for?" "Our friend Bob back there," I pointed to Settler Square, "said you talked to him about the news broadcast about our local killer." "Sure did. You can never be too careful. That's why I don't go out after dark. This is my exercise. I come into town, do my errands, and go for walks during the day. I stop, have a beer, play a little video poker, and go home after that. That's my life." "Where's home?" I asked. "East of town about 5 miles, just past Eddie's Tap. You know the place?" "I've heard of it. Can't say I've ever been inside." "It's decent and usually quiet. Strange fella in there Tuesday, though." Jack frowned. "Strange how?" "Mikey, the bartender, and I were in there alone. I was playing video poker when this fella walked in. Never seen the man before. The local news came on about the murders, and the guy started laughing. Strangest thing. Mikey got mad and said something to him. The guy got up and left. Couldn't have been in there more than 15 minutes. "Do you remember what this guy looked like?" "Nah, he had on one of those sweatshirts with the hood pulled up. Just seemed like an odd duck, you know?" "Could you tell his age or his height?" I asked. "Sorry, ma'am, I didn't look at him closely. After the news, I went back to my video poker and didn't look up again until I heard the front door slam. That's when I noticed he was gone." "Do you know what days Mikey works?" What's today?" "Thursday," Jack said. "Yep, he doesn't work again until Saturday." "Would you happen to know Mikey's last name?" "Sorry, no." "Okay, we'll need your name and phone number, please." I pulled my notepad and a pen out of my pocket and flipped to an empty page. He gave me his information. Jack and I handed him our cards and asked him to call either one of us if he remembered anything more about this man. Chapter 27. We headed back to the station. I asked the boss if we could have a group powwow. He agreed. The 4 of us gathered in Lieutenant Clark's office. "Okay, let's hear what you guys have. Clayton, Billings, you 2 took the parks, right?" "That's right, boss. We talked to... what?" Clayton looked at Billings, his eyebrows raised. 15 people? "That's about right." "And?" The lieutenant scratched at the stubble on his chin. "And nothing. Nobody had any leads for us. One guy started talking about somebody that went by the name Dime, but his buddy corrected him." "How so?" the lieutenant asked. "Well, he said he heard of a poker dealer that went by that name. Apparently, this dealer had his 15 minutes of fame last year. He dealt the winning hand for somebody who won over $1 million in a poker tournament in Vegas. The winning hand was a royal flush.
All diamonds. Anyway, the lead went nowhere. His buddy corrected him and told us the dealer went by the name Diamond, not Dime.
We groaned in unison.
Okay, Jade, Jack, any leads?
Go ahead, Jack said. We did interview somebody that goes by Dime, but he isn't our guy. He's a barber in town, and his dad had been calling him that name since he was a kid. The family surname is Cents, pronounced like cents. The dad called the brother Nickel. I shrugged and listened to more groans. There is someone I think we should question, though. Apparently, a bartender at Eddie's Tap on the outskirts of town had a strange patron in there 2 days ago. This patron laughed when the news segment came on TV about the murders.
That's unusual. So what did the bartender tell you?
That's the problem, sir. We talked to an older guy downtown. He told us about the incident, not the bartender. The old man doesn't know the bartender's last name, and he isn't scheduled to work again until Saturday.
Well, whoever is bartending now should know the guy's last name, right?
Yeah, we're going to call there shortly. The bar doesn't open until 4 o'clock.
Okay, good work. Jade, make that call at 4 and find out the guy's last name and his address. You and Jack pay him a visit.
Will do, Lieutenant. I'll keep you posted. We headed back to the bullpen, each with a styrofoam cup of coffee in our hand. I checked the time, and I had 30 minutes before I would make that call. I wrote myself a list of things that needed to be done. I didn't know how much time Jack and I would be at the office tomorrow with Morris's funeral beginning at 11. We'd check in first, then leave North Bend before 10 o'clock. I wanted to follow up with Perry, close out some old cases, and interview more guys that had been arrested earlier. It sounded as though they were part of the same crew cooking meth east of town. I sat at my desk with a clean sheet of paper and a pen in front of me. I made the call to Eddie's Tap. It wasn't quite 4 p.m. yet, but most bartenders arrived before they officially opened for business anyway. I wanted to catch whoever opened the bar during a quiet moment before any customers walked in. The phone rang 7 times. I almost hung up when I heard a voice answer.
Eddie's Tap.
Hello, I'm Sergeant Jade Monroe with the Washburn County Sheriff's Department. Here's my badge number. Write it down, please, since I'm not there to prove my identity to you. I'm wondering if you could spare a minute of your time.
Yeah, I guess.
Who am I speaking with, please?
This is Terry Ferring.
Hi, Terry. Are you a bartender there or the owner of Eddie's?
I'm a part-time bartender.
Do you know the bartender Mikey?
Yeah, sure I do.
I looked at Jack and nodded. That's great. I'll need Mikey's last name and an address if it's on file there.
Sure, give me a minute. I have to check in our personnel file. It's in the office.
No problem, thanks. I waited for a few minutes, giving my fingernails the once-over again. They looked worse than the last time I gave them the time of day.
Okay, here we are. His legal name is Michael Cole. He lives at 4905 South Merritt, apartment 203, right in North Bend. Do you want his cell number, too?
Yes, please. I wrote everything down. That should do it. Thanks, Terry. Goodbye.
Got what you needed?
Jack asked when I hung up. Yep. Let's hope he answers the phone. I pressed the buttons on my desk phone and waited. Jack, Clayton, and Billings were staring. I swiveled my chair around and saw the lieutenant staring at me, too, through his office window. I put my hand over the receiver and chuckled. You guys are going to jinx this. Stop gawking at me. I sat up straight and faced my desk. Mikey had just answered. I explained who I was and told him we were investigating the recent murder cases. I asked if Jack and I could stop by. We had a few questions.
Yeah, that's fine by me.
Thanks, Mikey. We'll be there in 15 minutes. I hung up. Ready, partner?
I sure am.
Jack reached in the top drawer of his desk and pulled out his notepad. Let's go. I told the lieutenant we were heading out.
Okay, I'm going to stick around until you're back. Brief me when you get in.
We climbed into the unmarked black car we had at our disposal. This vehicle was less conspicuous than a cruiser, especially when parking at a large apartment complex. The drive took only 7 minutes. The one thing I always loved about North Bend was the ease of getting around. No matter whether we were going north to south or east to west, the drive across town never took longer than 15 minutes at the most. We pulled into the parking lot and found a guest spot to park in. The complex looked quiet. I figured most residents were still at work. We walked into the main entrance and entered the vestibule. On the right wall were door buzzers for each apartment, and I pressed the button for apartment 203. The name Mike Cole was written under the plastic plate next to the button. "Hello?" "Hi, Mike, it's Sergeant Monroe." "Okay, come upstairs and turn right. I'm the third door on the left." "Thank you." He buzzed us through. Chapter 28. When I knocked on the door, he invited us in. I introduced Jack and they shook hands. "Please, have a seat," Mikey said, pointing to the kitchen table. "Thank you. Would you prefer to be called Mike or Mikey?" I asked as we sat down. "I guess since this is official business, Mike sounds better. What can I do for you?" I couldn't help staring at Mike's mustache when I talked to him. "This shouldn't take long. We were told by—" I checked my notes. "Mr. Abe Livingston that you had an odd patron in the bar on Tuesday." He stared blankly at me. "I guess I need a little more than that. There are a few odd people that come and go." "Sure, I understand." Abe said that the man sat at the bar wearing a hoodie and chuckled at the news segment about the murders. "Ah, yeah, I remember that guy now. What a nut job. Who would laugh at something that horrible? Especially when it happens in your own neck of the woods. You know what I mean?" Jack nodded. "Yes, we do. What can you tell us about him, Mike?" "Not a lot. I've never seen him before. He was only in the bar for a short while, like he was killing time." "What about his physical appearance? You know, height, weight, hair color, build?" "Well, he sat for most of the time. He wore a hoodie and green-tinted glasses. I remember his shirt was nicer, you know, decent. That's why the hoodie seemed odd. That's normally what you'd see a 20-year-old wear. With the hood pulled up, I mean. This guy looked older. He was kind of stocky. Oh, and that's right, he asked for a weird brand of beer, something I've never heard of. Eddie's is a plain bar, nothing fancy." I sat upright, my elbows resting on the tabletop. I was interested. "Would you happen to remember the beer's name?" "Nah, like I said, I'd never heard of it. He did ask for a second choice, though." "Which was?" "A Guinness, but we don't carry that brand either. He settled on a can of Bud Light with a glass. Funny how most bartenders remember the drinks more than they remember the customer. After I said something to him about laughing at the news, he threw a 5 on the bar and walked out. That's all I can tell you. Sorry I'm not much help." "To be honest, your help is the most we've gotten so far." "You didn't catch a glimpse of what he was driving, did you?" "Sorry, no. I turned back to the TV when he walked out. I didn't face the window, and the blinds were drawn anyway with the sun going down and all." "So what time would you estimate that to be?" Jack asked. I'd say close to 6. The news was wrapping up when he walked out." We thanked Mike for the information, handed him our cards, and shook his hand. "I hope you catch this guy soon," Mike said as he showed us to the door. "So do we." Jack and I updated the lieutenant when we got back to the station. "The bartender didn't have a good description to give us, Lieutenant," Jack said. "He told us the guy was stocky, weird, and wore a hoodie and tinted glasses." "Sounds like somebody who was trying to hide his identity. Who wears hoodies when it's 70 degrees outside?" the lieutenant said. I agreed. "Good point, boss. Apparently the guy ordered an unusual brand of beer, which the bartender couldn't remember the name of. He ended up drinking a Bud Light, and he wanted a glass with it." "A bartender that doesn't know the name of a beer?" Lieutenant Clark rubbed his forehead and rolled his eyes. I shrugged.